A lot of people are easily manipulated through this simple idea that most people get caught in. Welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Welcome, driven mofos. Now, in this episode, we are going to be talking about something that causes people to be easily manipulated, and it's something that I see a lot of people sort of getting caught up in, and it may be time to just question it. What I'm talking about is this idea of being selfish and being selfless. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Michael Mojo. I'm the owner of Mojo Human Performance Institute, where we focus on business, mindset, and lifestyle hacking for driven mofos. The reason why I do these episodes is that most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them. A lot of people don't know where that boundary is between how much am I doing for others and how much am I doing for myself. And what can happen is they'll start swinging almost like a pendulum, where they'll do a lot for other people and then they'll feel like they're getting taken advantage of. They'll start to become resentful towards other people. They might flip out, they might get upset, they might get angry, they might be frustrated. Or the other thing can happen, they might get completely shut down and isolate themselves. And this can happen because they're unsure of the boundary between being selfish and selfless. Now, a lot of people are easily manipulated in our society because when someone says to you, you're being selfish, what they're saying is, I think that you're being selfish. You might not be being selfish, but that person thinks you're being selfish. That's why we've got to be really careful about checking in and listening to what people really say. Because when someone says, you're fat or you're stupid or you're dumb, what they're really saying is, I think that you're dumb, or I think that you're fat, or I think that you're stupid. Now, when we generalize those things, we then feel like it's a lot more people than that one person saying something about us. And so it can really cause a lot of emotional upset and a lot of emotional distress. When you realize that it's just one person saying one thing, in a world of 7 billion people, that person's point of view is fucking irrelevant if you don't want to take it on board. So when someone says that you're selfish, it's normally a projection of what they think. People can be easily manipulated by someone else coming up to them and saying, I think that you're being selfish, because they're not getting what they want, so they're trying to manipulate you into doing something that they want you to do. Also, we've been convinced that good people are selfless. But I'm here to question that. And I question this a lot at my events because I like to break paradigms and patterns that people have been convinced are beneficial in life that actually fuck them up for life. And unless you question things, sometimes you can just fall victim or become trapped in just following the same path as everybody else, which may not be the path that you want. And most people in society, as I mentioned, in the podcast, that most people waste their life, and I don't want you to be one of them. I really do believe that most people waste their life because they never really think through what they want, how they want to do things, the person that they want to become, how they want to express themselves in the world. And so no matter what you do, there's going to be people out there who think you're selfish. There are lots of people out there that I've had feedback from over the years that go, you're selfish because you make all this money and you don't give it away to charity. And I go, well, fucking why don't you make more money and give it away to charity? And then you can be broke and you can live a shitty life because you keep giving away all your money. I don't perceive that that's going to be of benefit. And I also don't perceive that the majority of charities are going to spend money wisely in order for me to give them money freely that they haven't worked hard for in order to earn that money. So I'm not saying that charities are a good or a bad thing. It's just that the majority of them out there are fucking raw. Because it's free money. It's like our government, right? If they spend it poorly, they just raise taxes. So they just keep getting more money. Now, I can't do anything about it. Like if the government raises tax in Australia, I can't really do anything about it if I want to live here. It doesn't entice people to use money wisely. Anyway, I don't want to diverse too far off track here. That's not all charities either, by the way, but that's the majority of them. And it's because when you give someone something for nothing, they tend to abuse it or not use it wisely because they keep thinking that it always comes in. I've been accused of being selfish, but that's because someone wanted something from me that I wasn't prepared to give them, so they call me selfish because they didn't get what they wanted. Now, at the same time, I might have had a greater intention. That greater intention may be to help people, but they don't perceive it's in the way that they want, so they'll call me selfish, even though I might perceive that I'm being selfless. So that's why we've got to be very careful and question these things. Because if we don't question them, we just fall victim to following the path that everybody else follows. And I watched my grandmother, was a really interesting case, where every time a door knocker or someone in charity would knock on the door, my grandmother would walk to her purse and give her her last dollar or the last couple of cents. And I perceive it was because she wanted others to perceive that she was a nice person, that she was friendly, that she would help anybody, which she would. But the problem was she didn't have a lot to give because she didn't have a lot of money, like she was quite unhealthy, and she would just give everything to everybody else. But maybe that was her own way of not being selfish and doing things for herself. So it was almost like she was a martyr, where she would destroy her own life to please other people. And maybe it was an insecurity, where she wanted to be liked by other people so much that she was prepared to destroy her own life in order to be seen as a good person. When I saw that growing up, I went, I don't want to be that same person. I've got to do things differently. But I also knew I didn't want to do things at the expense of others, but I also didn't want to do things at the expense of myself. And so there's a nice check-in point that you've got to check in with yourself about, why am I doing this? What's a greater intention? I have people who come to me and say, you should give money to mental health and blah, blah, blah. And I go, why? And they go, well, because it's helping mental health. And I go, I do that every fucking day with my events, with my podcasts, with the people that I coach and work with, because I'm highly skilled and highly trained at the area of mental performance. And I have to work with a lot of people that have gone down that path and found it ineffective. And so they come to me in order to get a different approach. Now, I'm not saying that all my shit works or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that sometimes people think that I'm being selfish because I'm not helping others. But in fact, everything I do helps others. I do this podcast for free because it helps others. So that's selfless. But at the same time, I'm selfish because I'm trying to promote our business. I'm trying to promote the product. And I love sharing information because it's a high value of mine as well. So I think if I can share great information that's highly valuable, and I give people an insight and great tips, hopefully they'll come to my events one day. And if we do a good job of that, then they'll keep coming back. They'll become repeat customers. Their life will improve and so on. And everybody, our community expands together. Now, is that selfish? I'm not sure. Is that selfless? I'm not sure. I just know that I have to try and navigate that almost on a daily or a weekly basis and keep checking in with myself. Am I taking too much? Am I giving too much? Because if not, you can become quite erratic in those massive swings that you have in life. But please be aware that the most selfish people on the planet are normally the most selfless in a way. And let me give you an example. Oprah Winfrey gave away millions of dollars years ago. And I remember reading the comment section because sometimes I like to dive into the human behavior of how people think, and I'll read through the comments. Most people were saying things like, what a stingy bitch, she's worth like $1 billion and she's only given away like 4 million. What a douche, it's only 4 million, like to her that's pennies. But that same person, like the schools that are being built in Africa, do you think they value Oprah Winfrey's $4 million that she donated? Or old Fred's bloody 20 cents that he gave, or his $1.50 that he gives every week? I'm pretty sure they get more done with Oprah's $4 million or $10 million or whatever she donated. Now, my point is that because Oprah is very selfish as a person and she focuses heavily on her career and her business aspirations and all that, she's able to give to so many people. Not that I've watched the Oprah show for years, but I've sort of come across and seen it. Some of you are sitting there going, yeah, right, I bet you watch it every day at lunch. But no, I don't. I've watched on there where she gives away all these prizes, she gives away cars. Now, is that being selfish? Is that being selfless? I'm not sure. But what I know is that she's able to give away tens of millions of dollars, if not more than that, maybe even hundreds. I'm not sure how much money Oprah's given away in her lifetime. And I'm not sure how many prizes and donations and things like that she's given away over her whole life. But I would assume it's probably in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, those things that she's giving to others are probably huge. Like, she's probably made a massive impact in a lot of people's lives. But at the same time, in order to be able to do that, she's extremely selfish because she'll work long hours. She will focus on her career over her family in the majority of cases. She'll focus on her career over her relationship. Sometimes she focuses on her career over her own health. Now, that might be selfish. It might be selfless. I'm not too sure. But the point that I'm trying to make is, if you're really clear with what you're trying to achieve in life and you check in and ask, am I taking too much or am I giving too much? And you do that consistently, you'll stay in this nice balanced path. Instead of having these huge swings where you're insecure, feel like you need to do everything for everybody else in order to please everybody else because you value their opinion and you value their saying that you're such a nice person, a great person, at the expense of yourself. Now, here's something that most people don't know about human behavior and human psychology. Just because you do something externally doesn't mean that it's not internal. And I've asked this plenty of time at my events, and I know that it's almost 100% success rate or strike rate of those who are self-aware. When I say, do you consider yourself a kind person? Most people put up their hand and go, yes, I'm a kind person. And then when I say, if I took a snapshot inside your brain daily, would you consider yourself a kind person? And people start smiling, they start laughing because they know that their own internal dialogue isn't the same as what they represent externally. Now, some people, when they're trying to be kind to everybody else because they're insecure and they want other people to perceive them as being a kind person or want them to be seen as being nice or friendly, they value their opinion over their own opinion of themselves internally. And so those same people who give up all their time, who give up all their energy, who give up all their money, mentally, internally, are very, very, in most cases, self-destructive, where they go to bed at nighttime, their brain goes, you piece of shit, you've got nothing, you're not getting the results that you want, you're giving away too much. And so they swing in these polarities internally and externally between, I'm a nice person, look how kind I am, look how much I'm helping everyone, to I fucking hate myself, which isn't very kind. I don't do anything for me. I don't care about myself. And so it keeps reinforcing itself because what I find is normally someone who's very insecure on the inside about who they are, value other people's opinion over their own, But that keeps reinforcing a cycle. When you beat the shit out of yourself all the time and you don't know how to switch that off, you'll probably go to someone and get diagnosed with a mental health condition. But the other thing that will happen is that you'll keep validating people's external opinions as being important, yet your internal opinions of yourself, you'll also validate, but they're normally very self-destructive. And you don't see that the destruction that's creating internally is due to how you act externally. But the more that you express something, normally there's a polarity of the opposite happening internally. So when someone comes to me and says, you know, Michael, everyone else says that I'm doing really, really well in life, but I fucking hate myself. I know that what's happening is what they're expressing isn't a true balance of who they are as a person. And then so their opposite is coming out internally. And so their internal dialogue is trying to keep them in balance between what they're expressing externally and what they're expressing internally. When you know that, you realize that just because you're kind to somebody else doesn't mean that you're unkind to yourself. When you're doing everything for somebody else and you're selfless to others, that also might mean that you're being very selfish to yourself. When you're being very selfish externally, you might be being very selfless to yourself. You just have to check between the internal and the external, listen to your own internal dialogue, get those imbalances, because the more you keep doing that shit, the more emotionally volatile you become and the more mentally volatile you'll be as well. And this is what I see a lot with people with mental health conditions. Now, I know I'm probably going to get some people out there who attack me on this, but I'm more than happy to, if we want to get someone as a test case and run them, I'm more than happy to take people with mental health conditions on board, unless they have a genetic predisposition or they're born with something. There's a lot of people out there who had a great childhood and everything's going great, and then all of a sudden at 25, they start having mental health conditions. There's normally a trigger to that. And there's normally something that's going on. Most of the tools that have been taught take on board generalizations and subjective ideas rather than really digging deep and finding things out. And that might be because the therapists are scared. It might also be because the mental health industry over amplifies things like suicide and stuff like that. And so the practitioners and the therapists might be afraid to push people and to get the real truth of what's going on out of people. I have seen that quite a bit as well. But the point that I'm making is that a lot of those volatilities are created from someone trying to be something that they're not and expressing one thing and suppressing the other thing. I think that there is a beautiful balance between being selfish and selfless at the same time, and also being selfless and selfish at the same time. Some of the most selfish people that I know do everything for everybody else, and that's extremely selfish because other people become highly reliant on them. And parents will see this as well when they do everything for their kids become highly reliant on them, which is the symbiotic relationship that they're setting up. They want that to happen because probably the parent is massively insecure, needs to have the kids, they need to feel needed, and so they over support the child. But then the child can become needy even as it grows up into an adult. And this is where you see like the 40-year-old adult that's never left home that still lives at home with their parents. Because why would they move out of home when mum or dad does everything for them and they don't even have to wipe their own ass? So they become very immature, is the word, in the way that they're living life. And that is very selfish for the parent to do that. But also, they would perceive that they're selfless because they're giving everything to that child that they possibly can. Also, a parent who sets boundaries and holds their children accountable, that might be selfless for the child because it helps them to create boundaries and to establish boundaries, and also to realize what works in society and what doesn't work in society, and helps them to sort of, I guess you could say, fit in, although that's not the term that I really like to use, because fitting in I don't think is a great idea, especially in a society of averages. There's a very fine line there in parenting that I've seen. Now, if you push a child too far because you're selfish, that also might be destructive to the child. But if you do too much and you're too selfless, that can also be just as destructive to the child as well. So there's this beautiful fine line. And what I'm getting at is that it's really important to check in with yourself consistently and ask yourself, am I being too selfless? Am I being too selfish? And listen to your own mindset. If your psychology and your emotions are swinging too far back and forward, where you're doing too much and then becoming over aggressive towards people and getting fucked off and irritated, and you're like, well, everyone keeps taking advantage of me and I'm really pissed off because I've got to do everything for everybody. That's acting out the opposite that's happening at the same time. And maybe it's because you haven't set boundaries, you haven't kept people accountable, and that's what's now starting to get expressed. On the other hand, if you're someone who is over aggressive and, challenges people too much consistently, and you're very selfish, you might find that you don't have a lot of friends, life's very lonely, and there's a lot of people out there that may not want to hang around you. So you might start to realize that you need to be a little bit more selfless and help other people. And there's a beautiful balance point. And for those who are listening who are business owners, that needs to be checked in consistently. And I've gone through it plenty of times in business where, I give way too much to customers and then I get fucking irritated and I pull back and I don't do enough then for the community, and then the community starts to fall apart a little bit, or we start having event numbers drop and then I start having to reconsider the way that I'm behaving. But it's a consistent learning process. Like every parent goes through it. I believe anyway, from all the parents that I've worked with, is they're always trying to figure out where's that beautiful balance point between holding a child accountable, creating boundaries, giving them enough and supporting them enough, but not supporting them enough where they take the piss and they don't have boundaries and they get out of control. So I think every parent has that balance point that they're trying to figure out. Business owners have to do exactly the same thing as well. If you do too much for your customers, some of them can start taking advantage and they'll start pushing the boundaries way too far. And then if you tighten everything up and you're too rigid, like some of the large corporations you might work with, everything's black and white and they have no room for movement at all. And it can really piss you off and irritate you and you don't want to deal with them anymore. So these are things that you want to check in with. But anyway, I believe that being selfless and selfish are the same thing. If you're perfectly balanced in both of them, life will be fantastic, but life's never perfectly balanced. So you'll sort of swing in and out of those two things a little bit, but it's a matter of just being self-aware and readjusting. Anyway, I hope this helps, and I hope it helps to crack a couple of little fantasies that people have been told that if you're selfless, life will be great, because I guarantee it won't be if you're just selfless alone without being selfish as well. You do have to look after yourself. You do have to do things for yourself. You do need to have a mission, a purpose, some clear values, some clear goals, and do all that stuff. But at the same time, if it helps out others, fantastic. Only recently, I was actually listening to an interview with Elon Musk, and they were criticizing him for the amount of money that he's worth. Now, he doesn't make that money. It's just that he is worth a large sum of money because of the shares that he holds in the companies that he owns. If he were to sell off those shares, then he would have that money, but he's not. So it's just his worth in shares in most cases. But people were criticizing him, and he said, I feed millions of families every year by providing jobs, by keeping other businesses that are vendors and providers for the services that we create through our companies. He's like, I feed millions of people every year with what I do. Now, is he selfish? Probably. Is he selfless? Probably. So these are just some things to consider. Most people have jobs because someone else is selfish and they created something and they wanted to bring something to the marketplace and do something for themselves in a way. But if they're able to support thousands or hundreds of other people as well and provide money into the economy and taxation, they're probably selfless as well. I mean, I've had people attack me as well and say things like, you don't give a shit about people and blah, blah, blah. And I go, I pay more in tax, which then goes back into government spending and the fact that the lawns get mowed and there's garbage collectors, clean up shit in the ocean and all that sort of stuff that our government invest in. All of that stuff and renewables and whatever, all of that stuff that the government spend money on, I'm making a contribution to that by the amount of taxation that I pay. And so the more successful I am, the more tax I've got to pay in most cases. Also, the amount of tax that comes out of wages and staffing, the more staff I'm able to help. So please understand that some of the most selfish people on the planet are also some of the most selfless. And also, if you have a look at the amount of money that are donated to charities, a large proportion of philanthropy comes from extremely wealthy people. And so a lot of people, as they get older in life, who are extremely successful entrepreneurs or investors, normally start to give back when they get to a point where they just go, I've got enough now, and they'll start to give back to society in some way, shape, or form. Hence why there's the Gates Foundation. Warren Buffett, I know, is part of a scheme where when he passes away, that money then goes into huge pools that then fund a whole bunch of charitable organizations. So we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars here. So, I mean, that's pretty selfless. Now, I hope you're enjoying these podcasts. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm here to help make you question maybe the things that are holding you back and stopping you from doing the things that you want to do in life. But anyway, I hope that helps. Thank you for all those out there who have been sharing this on the social media platforms as well. I know I've been getting tagged in a few posts of you sharing these podcasts as well with other people and saying, come and have a listen to this. I really appreciate it. It helps me to get this information out to more people. And it also shows that a lot of you out there are valuing this information as well. Please, also, if you want me to talk about anything, shoot me a message on any of my socials. So Michael Mojo 00 on my socials, hit me up. Say, I would love to hear about this, or I've got a question for you. Can you talk about it on the podcast? And I'm more than happy to answer questions or to help out in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, I'm Michael Mojo. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, never underestimate the dream and stay driven mofos.